Well, thank you for your patience. We had a few technical issues with making sure that the live stream was working properly and that the Zoom audience was connected properly and that our screens here were all working properly. So appreciate the patience and thank you to the staff, including the IT staff, for helping out make sure that everything was working properly. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Saugeen Shores Committee of Adjustment on Tuesday, May the 21st, 2024. It is 5:10 p.m. and we are at the Nuclear Innovation Institute for our first meeting here as the council chambers are under renovation. So I'd like to call the meeting to order. The first order of business is the land acknowledgement, and Member Zimmerman will read that for us today.
Thank you.
Chad, if you can press the button to turn your mic on. Thank you.
Thank you. We acknowledge that we are meeting on the traditional lands and treaty territory of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, which consists of the Chippewas of Saugeen and the Chippewas of Nawash unceded First Nation. We understand this land holds immense significance to the people of Saugeen Ojibwe Nation. We appreciate those who live and work alongside us today and who continue the traditions of their ancestors as stewards of the land we are privileged to inhabit. We thank them for the contributions they have made in both caring for the land and in shaping this community. We commit to truth and reconciliation, to acknowledging the truth about what happened to Indigenous peoples because of colonization, and to reconciliation, which begins with each and every one of us. With land acknowledgements, we are always encouraged to share a personal moment, and my apologies if I've shared this moment in this committee, but it is one of many that I choose when I'm doing a land acknowledgement. I did not grow up in the Saugeen Shores area, but I do have the privilege to call this home now. We are raising our 2 children in this area, and we're in playoff season, and I think it was about 6 years ago, we were in playoffs, and when the national anthems come on in our house, we choose to stand up. And my daughter at the time was singing along, and I didn't understand a word of it, and it wasn't her singing voice this time. So when we got to the end of it, I said, okay, what was that? And she explained to me that she had just sang the Canadian anthem in Anishinaabe-Moan, or also known as the Ojibwe language. It was at the moment I realized just how privileged we are to live in this region of Saugeen Shores, to be adjacent to Saugeen First Nation and to share their lands. And in this time of spring and the renewal, whether it be the leaves on the trees, the seeds in the ground, and obviously the beautiful water we're by, these are the things I think about as I remember the role all of us play in colonialism and why the cultures and teachings can be so important, and they're certainly important in our house. As a local government and public organization, we are dedicated to learning about Indigenous culture, to fostering a better relationship with First Nations and their people. And we commit ourselves to actions that move us forward on a path to healing along with the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation.
Thank you. This is now a place where any member can acknowledge a pecuniary interest in any of the applications on the agenda this evening. You can do it now or at any point during the agenda. Seeing none, we will move on to adoption of our minutes from February the 20th, 2024. That was a meeting where we were focused on a beginning review of revisions to our sign bylaw. Can I have a mover and a seconder for the minutes? Moved by the Vice Deputy Mayor Myatt, seconded by Councillor Stack. Are there any comments, questions, omissions, errors to the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? The minutes are approved. We have 2 public hearings on the agenda this evening. So I have to go back to my nice little notes here. It's been a while. Next on the agenda is a public meeting for file number A-2024-004 and is a public meeting under the Planning Act. The meeting on this file is now open. The purpose of the public meeting is to learn about the application and to hear from members of the public. First, we will receive a report from planning staff. Then we will hear from the applicant or their agents. Then we will hear from any members of the public. And members of the public are advised that the ability to appeal the decision on this application may be limited if you have not provided comments on the application before the decision is made. Comments may be made verbally before the committee or submitted to staff in writing before the bylaw is passed. After we've heard from the public, the committee will discuss and consider a recommendation on this application. I'll now ask for the planner, and I believe that is, I'll get the last name right here. I'll now ask for the planner in the file to present the application, and the planner is Jake Boesfield Bastido. Okay, thank you, Jake. The floor is yours.
How about that?
That's good.
Good. Okay, before I dive in, I just wanted to really quickly introduce myself. I know I've met some of you at a council meeting, but for the members of the committee I haven't met, my name is Jake Boesfield Bastido. I started with the planning team at Bruce County back in October, and looking forward to working with you all. So the purpose of the application before us tonight is to seek relief from the rear yard requirements of the zoning bylaw at 220 Belcher Lane, where 7.5 meters is required for a residential dwelling. 1.5 is requested in this case. So what this would do is facilitate a structure that's already there to be used as a primary residential dwelling. Before I get into the merits of the application itself, I wanted to quickly cover the history of what got us here, as it's pertinent to the file tonight. This parcel and the adjacent parcel were previously understood to form one parcel. And so in the past, a permit was issued for the structure we're considering tonight as an accessory structure, which has different rear yard setback requirements. Only 0.9 meters are required. Since then, a legal opinion has confirmed that they're actually two separate parcels. So the existing dwelling is on a separate parcel. The owner, Sal, who's with us here tonight, I would like to downsize to this existing structure that was thought of as an accessory, but it can't be recognized as a primary dwelling because it doesn't conform to the setbacks of that 7.5 meters, as I had mentioned. There is an addition proposed that's shown on the site plan. That's not specifically what the committee is considering tonight, because that's proposed away from the rear yard. It's just recognizing this existing deficiency. So in reviewing application for a minor variance, we compare it to the 4 tests as per the Planning Act. So first, the proposal does meet the intent of the official plan, in that residential use is what's proposed, and that's permitted in both the county and local official plans. Furthermore, I'll add that approving the variance would have the effect of adding housing supply to the built-up area, in accordance with infilling objectives that are found in both local and official plans. And finally, the applicant had a archaeological review done, and it's complying with the cultural heritage policies of the official plan. Next, the proposal maintains the intent of the zoning bylaw in that the variance is for an existing condition, and the addition that is proposed is away from that rear yard, and the lot and the building meet all other aspects of the zoning bylaw. The structure is in keeping with the built form of an accessory structure that you might find in that area. So it's considered desirable and appropriate for the development of that land. Finally, it's our opinion that permitting the existing structure to be used as primary dwelling does not have any negative impacts on adjacent properties or the neighborhood to continue to function as is. So given all the above, we're of the opinion that the requested relief meets the 4 tests of the minor variance and can be supported. I'm happy to come back and answer any questions when you have them, but that's it for me.
Thank you. Questions come later.
Yeah.
Okay. Next up, you did mention that the applicant was here, and I also note that she also has an agent along with her. So if either of you would like to speak, the mic can be yours now. Would you like to speak? Seeing no interest there, we'll move on. Are there any members of the public on the Zoom that would like to speak? Not that we're aware of. Okay. And now that we have heard from the planner, the committee now has a chance to discuss and consider a recommendation on this application. So it's now open to the committee. Does anybody have any questions? Any comments? Vice Deputy Mayor Myatt.
I like this recommendation. I really have no difficulty with it at all. I see this really nice tall hedge on the one side, which is nice. And I suppose in the future, when whoever decides to purchase that lot in behind, it'll be, close to that lot line. But again, there was a, situation happened a few years back that, it indicates here it's a separately deeded parcel, so I have no difficulty. Was there any public comments, any letters sent in?
That was next on my after.
Okay, then
Are there any?
no comments?
There are no public
No, I didn't.
comments and written submissions that came
I
in.
didn't see any, so, but anyways, I really don't have too many questions about this application. I think it's a good recommendation that you've written.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions? I have a few. Is there anybody else? Okay, my questions are perhaps either answered by the applicant or by the planner. I wanted to make sure that, and I believe that it was mentioned in the archaeology assessment that a survey was done of the lot, so that we're now addressing accurate lot line positions, so that the distances are accurate as requested. So there is a survey on the lot.
Yeah.
Thank you. I also just wanted to ask, is 220 and 228 now, have they been now separated into two lots for municipal purposes? So they have two different tax rolls now? Has that happened?
That's my understanding. Is that yours? Okay.
Okay, so the discrepancy that was mentioned in the report, they're now separate on the municipal roll. Okay. Pardon? Dana has a comment.
The request has been put into MPAC and there will be two separate roll numbers. We've sent them the confirmation that they are in fact two separate deeds on title, I guess. So they will be two different tax rolls. Right now, I think they're still currently taxed as one whole roll number, but it is working to be rectified.
Thank you. Saul, if you're going to answer another question, can you just step up to the mic too? Because then all of the other people, if a question comes that you have to answer, if you can just answer on the mic, you don't have to stand up yet, but then it lets the people out on Zoom hear the response better too. Okay. I wanted to ask, the structure that exists there appears to be on slab. So I just wondered if there was consideration given, and this is probably to the applicant, consideration given to moving the structure to, it's a big lot. I believe it's 75 by 119 feet. So that's a very big lot in this area. So was any consideration given to moving the structure? Because it's on slab. So, did you consider that at all? And
Absolutely no consideration because it'd be a hell of a job.
Pardon me?
It would be a big job.
Okay. Then I would ask for advice from staff about, it's very close to a rear lot line that abuts a vacant piece of property right now. The fence that appeared in the pictures that we saw looked to be not a permanent kind of fence. So is there a possibility of putting a condition in here that an appropriate fence be constructed across there, which in fact provides some separation from the vacant lot behind, which, because this is incredibly close to their backyard, and normally there would be 23 feet there in terms of a setback. And we're considering enabling 5 feet. So is there a possibility of putting a condition in here about a fence being constructed that's a little more structurally permanent than what appears to be there in the photograph that we saw? Who can I ask that question to? To Jake? Jake, can you answer that question, please?
I'm sorry, I actually I can't give you a definite answer. It's something I could look into, but if any of the town staff feel they can jump in.
Well, if I may, Chair, certainly any condition that the committee feels would help and be directly tied and is enforceable can be attached to the decision sheet. It's not being recommended, for the reasons that Jake's outlined, but you could write a condition.
If I may, Madam Chair, I just wanted to note in our analysis of that existing condition, the idea was that a building permit was issued for this building as an accessory structure. So it's not necessarily something that is, say, foreign to the neighborhood to have a building that close to the lot line. I do understand the difference in it being a residence, but the conditions that are standard with a minor variance would ensure that this doesn't allow any permissions if the owner were to redevelop and propose like a full-size home that close to the lot line. This would not afford that permission to them.
I appreciate the answer. This is not an accessory structure that we're talking about now. We're talking about a primary residence. It's not even an additional residential unit. It's a primary residence built practically, on a lot line. So a fence to me makes good sense because there will be outdoor amenity space right outside this building that, it looks like there's already a garden in front, sort of kidney-shaped garden there. And so my question about the fence was to provide some appropriate separation because it's extremely close to a backyard. I would welcome if anybody else feels that a fence would be a good condition to put in there for lot separation. Seeing nobody else interested in that, I guess I'll just move on. Are there any other questions or comments? Member Zimmerman?
Mine may be a matter of process, but through the chair. I noted at the top page 6 of the report, the author speaks to the building and a change in use permits. So I assume that is speaking to the change in use from accessory to a primary residence. And so in terms of the process of events, this comes to committee tonight to approve that the structure. I guess I'm wondering what the process is for that, because it seems like something that may have been better placed after the change in use permit. So could I just get clarification on what the process is from someone?
Dana, can you answer that?
The process will come after depending on if this is approved, because as it stands, it can only be used as an accessory building. So to use it as the single family dwelling, this would need to be approved, and then they would apply for a building permit for the change of use from accessory to single family dwelling, and then for the addition.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? And we have no written submissions that were received. So seeing that there are no further questions, I now declare the public meeting on this file to be closed. And we will now consider a recommendation on the application. We do have a recommendation before us from planning, which is to, I'll read it to you. The application for minor variance from comprehensive zoning bylaw 75-2006 is hereby granted subject to the following conditions. that any future development on the property conforms to the provisions of the zoning bylaw. And number two, that the decision applies only to the proposed development as indicated on Schedule A attached to and forming part of this decision. The reasons for recommending granting are that number one, the variance maintains the intent and purpose of the official plan. Number two, the variance maintains the intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw. Number three, the variance requested is desirable for the appropriate and orderly development and use of the lands and buildings. And number four, the variance is minor in nature. Can I have a mover and a seconder for that recommendation? Moved by the Vice Deputy Mayor, seconded by Member Martin. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? And that motion is carried. Thank you. And you'll receive a copy of the decision sheet too. Next up, we have a public meeting for file number A-2024-009. And the name on the file is Somerset. And again, the purpose of this meeting is to learn about the application and to hear from members of the public. And first, we will ask for the report from the planner, and the planner on this file is Julie Steeper from the county, and I believe Julie's on the Zoom. And there she is. You have the floor, Julie.
Good evening, Committee. Chair Huber. The purpose of the application this evening is to seek relief from the interior side yard setback. The proposed setback is 6.3 meters, whereas the required setback in the zoning bylaw is 11 meters. The applicant is requesting relief for 4.7 meters. If approved, the proposed amendment would facilitate the construction of a 3 6-story residential apartment building at 1208 Goderich Street. The building in particular seeking relief is Building C on the site plan. The site is situated at the northeastern intersection of Waterloo Street and Devonshire Road in Port Elgin. The lands are currently vacant. The application is considered to meet the 4 tests. No comments of concern were received from agencies, and no public comments were received on this application. And this concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. I believe we also have, on behalf of the applicant, the applicant Dave Aston and one of his agents, Alex Strung, on the Zoom. Would either Alex or Dave wish to speak? And if you do, please state your name so we know which one you are, because it's not always evident to us.
Good evening, Madam Chair. Dave Aston with MHBC, and yes, Mr. Drung is here as well. I don't have too much to add. We've been working quite a bit with staff as it relates to the development of the lands as a whole. We worked through a zone change and official plan amendment process, and as we got into some of the layout and the detailed design considerations, that's where we found that we were looking for the need for some variance to the bylaw along that interior side yard. We have been working through site plan review and completed a second submission. So we're confident in the overall design of the site relative to the comments that have been received. And just looking this evening for the committee to support the staff recommendation to approve the minor variance. And happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public on the Zoom that wish to speak? Seeing none. Ms. Steeper, the planner did mention that there were no written submissions that were received, but can I just get confirmation? Yeah, we didn't receive any with the town either. So do committee members have any questions for either the planner or for the applicant? Member Wallace?
Through the chair, my name is Hope Wallace, and I had, walked down the area. And it looks like there is some housing that has utilities already installed in that area. But in the application, it said the land was vacant where that rear um, variance is going. So I just wanted to clarify where exactly that building C is going to be situated. And what is, I guess the second question is, what is the purpose, in the future is the purpose of that undeveloped land?
Ms. Steeper, can you confirm what abuts the property? There is a townhouse development, I believe they're on adjacent to Waterloo.
So let me just have a moment. So it's commercial lands next to the building C. And surrounding the property is to the east is the commercial lands and the existing hotel and grocery store. There's a stormwater management pond, single family dwellings and townhouses to the west, and vacant residential commercial lands to the north. I'm not sure if that answers all the question there, but that's kind of what's surrounding the property.
Just to further clarify, the lands directly north of the storm pond is partially occupied of the townhouse dwelling under construction. Aerial photo hasn't caught up with the ground conditions is all, so.
So that is my concern, is that when I was walking down the area, that variance is going to encroach on those residential buildings quite close. I mean, we have regulations of 11 meters for a reason, especially when we have a building that's 20 meters high. And then we have individual residents that are single levels. They're mostly bungalows in that area.
Do you have a comment?
Well, just more on the process is if it's a question, are you asking for the planner's opinion on whether it has an impact or doesn't have an impact? Okay, well then perhaps Ms. Steeper can answer that.
If I may provide some information there. Just one moment here. It's directly adjacent to proposed commercial. I just want to, I'm sorry, I'm just having a screen delay here, so just one moment. I'm kind of freezing up at the moment. The proposed side yard setback would still fulfill the required purpose, is considered adequate. It would provide buffer to the adjacent commercial lands. So I don't necessarily see concerns with the side yard that's proposed with this application.
No, I'll just provide further clarification. I mean, the interior setback is really with the commercial. I'm just emphasizing what Ms. Steeper has said. The setback to the residential actually it would exceed its typical setback to those lands. And it's not, it would exceed the setback if it was a straight lot line abutting the residential property, but it's separated by about 5 or 6 meters of it in addition to the setback that's already shown on the drawing.
I think if it's the curvature of the road that makes the lot lines not always line up. And I believe what has been said is the vacant property that's behind the independent grocery store. I think that's mostly what abuts this property, and that land is zoned commercial. So it's not zoned residential at the moment. And you know, that would require a planning application to change that. But because I was going to ask, when you look at the back of the townhouse development along Waterloo, the distance from one of those structures to this structure is what you just described. So in addition to the setback that we're being asked to consider, there's a setback that's putting a proper distance in there from those residences. Is that correct?
Well, that's my opinion. I think Ms. Steeper was saying that as well. I don't know if further confirmation, but if it was clear to everybody, I think the chair did a good job of explaining that.
Madam Chair, if I may just confirm as well, that block that's being referenced was or is or was a block on the overall, what we refer to as a Summerside plan of subdivision. So that block did form part of the broader development plan for the area. And I would confirm that in the typical rear yard scenario for those townhouses, there's a 6-meter setback within that block to the townhouses. So in addition to at that location, the building, if you were to take the corner as a diagonal to where that block would be, which essentially extends a straight line north-south along Building C, we would be exceeding that because there's approximately 13 meters between the Building C on the west side to that block of the townhouses. So the decrease, the requested relief or decrease in the setback is along the property boundary that's entirely shared with the commercial zone.
Is there anything else, Member Wallace?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Vice Deputy Mayor Myatt?
And thanks for explaining that. And I've looked at that area many times, and I appreciate your clarification that it abuts the commercial development, because when you talk about the 1.5 meter, there was a 6-meter setback, but then you got the commercial. So I'm not really too concerned about that. I did have a question about the and this will come with site plan control, I know, but I'm going to ask it anyways tonight because it's important to our community, is the 30% allocation for green space. And it relates to this because with the reduced setback and you want to get your square footage of your buildings in there, you can't, I read your comment that you can't decrease the size to get the kind of buildings you want to get in there, the number of units. Will the 30% be still maintained for green space? That's really important to this, well, important to me, and I'm sure important to council and the community. Or are you suppressing it? Or hopefully it's not below 30%. Where did this land? Where will this land with site plan control? Where will this land with percentage of green space allocation?
Through Madam Chair, I can tell you that there's no request to seek relief from the landscape open space requirement. So that will be maintained and exceeded through the site plan review process. We've been focused on the green space primarily between Waterloo Street and the new development to provide some buffer and green space that transitions from the townhouses on Waterloo Street to the apartment buildings internal to the site. So we'll be maintaining the zoning requirement for the minimum landscape open space.
And just as a follow-up, Madam Chair, and that's great news, because the people on Waterloo Street on the west side there, where that rural housing is really, really critical. That you as developers do a great job, a really upstanding job, with the greenery along that Waterloo Street, because the buffering there is going to be really, really important. And I hope a lot of your 30% ends up specifically in that area. And I know we're dealing with the setback at the north end. I get that, but I just want to throw that comment in about the importance of buffering for those residents in Waterloo.
Yeah.
They were very loud. They were very loud about that, and I'm glad you're listening to them.
Yes, and through you, Madam Chair, just to confirm, in that location, the setback from Waterloo Street to the edge of building and parking is just over 24 meters.
Correct. Yeah, okay.
Are there any other comments or questions? And just for the benefit of the non-council members, the site plan situation goes to regular council at a planning meeting. So that was the Vice Deputy Mayor's comment that it's not part of this variance application, but because I would question too, one access road into so many units. So, but those sorts of things will come up during site plan discussions later on. Are there any other comments? Member Martin?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to be supporting this for 5 reasons. The first one is the construction of these residential apartment buildings or condo buildings are in line with county and municipal targets requiring 30% of the proposed dwelling units to be of medium or higher density. Number 2, the proposed reduction of the interior sideline setback is in fact adjacent to the commercial lands. And it's not going to have impact on the proposed commercial areas as far as the setback. The proposed development is also consistent with a majority of the surrounding land use. And the development would comply with all the rest of the required setbacks, except for the interior side yard setback. But most importantly, the setback required by the zoning bylaw cannot be accommodated on this site. It would, because it would have a negative impact on the amenity.
Excuse me, Michael, can you just put the mic a little closer to your?
Oh my goodness, I've never been told I'm too
They're
quiet.
they're having trouble hearing you on the Zoom, and your comments are so great.
I
We
can-
need to make sure they get broadcast.
I can do an interpretive dance as well. Most important is the setback required by the zoning bylaw can't be accommodated on the site, as it would have negative impacts on the amenity area and the landscape space provided between buildings A and B. If the setback were to be accommodated, building C and consequently building B would be required to be shifted to the south. And the shifting of this would significantly reduce the usable space for the landscaping and the amenity area. So that combined with the fact that the impact is going to be on a commercial area causes me to want to speak in support of this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else have a question? Member Zimmerman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am going to support this, but I think there's real opportunity here. We see a lot of variances like this come to this committee, and given the growth of Saugeen Shores and the housing crisis in Ontario, I think there are opportunities to look at what the setbacks and the like are. My question, though, is to those on the call, and I'm troubled, I guess, that these things are known when the architectural drawings are commissioned. And how do we get to this point when the bylaws aren't changing, the setbacks aren't changing? And it's hard not to see this as how do we maximize profit as opposed to perhaps just generating good profit. Let's make sure we're maximizing it. And these things tend to have a stamp of approval, so to speak. So I wonder what has changed, and that's the question. What has changed from the time you had these architectural drawings commissioned to now that you weren't able to comply with the setbacks originally in your planning phase?
Through you, Madam Chair, sorry, I can try and respond to that.
Sure, I can barely see your face on the screen, so I was about to say, I'll ask the applicant to respond.
So thanks, Madam Chair. When we were first working through the official plan and the zoning for the lands, we were working within the context of conceptual building drawings and layout. As we got into more of the details associated with the building orientation and locations relative to the site grading and servicing, and then the overall building design, it led us into a little more details associated with the layout than it would have been at the time of the zone change. The other thing that had evolved a little bit was the delineation of the property boundary between some of the commercial that's existing and the expansion of the Staybridge Hotel. So that was, you know, a minor factor, but enough that we had to deal with it, and that it changed the layout of the site just enough that the building orientation changed. And then one of the last items did relate to the grades associated with getting the underground parking into the final building, and making sure that at the end of the day, all of the grades were working across the site for coverage of the underground area and coverage of the servicing. So once we got a sense of some of those details, we did identify that early on and have discussions with the town staff on the best approach, and work together ultimately to move forward with the minor variance application. So while there was, you know, conceptual analysis completed at the time of the zoning and official plan amendment, I think it really was just getting into the details associated with the site design that ended up in us having to proceed with a request to vary the bylaw.
Anything further? Chad? Member Beckett?
Yes, hi. So to the south of building C, it says landscaped area just below it. How wide is that area supposed to be? I can't quite see it on the drawing. I think it's just south of building C. I'm just wondering, if that was 4.7 meters, couldn't you just eliminate that and move the building down?
Through Madam Chair, at that corner of that building, there's the 2-meter sidewalk, and then the building, and then the space in between, I think, is what's being referenced. It's not specifically dimensioned that location, but you know, it's 2 meters plus, so it could be approximately 5 meters. Even if we move the building down, we still need to maintain the sidewalk. It wouldn't result in a complete removal of the need for the variance. And we also need some room just to provide for some grading and transition around the building. And we're trying to have some landscape area around the ground floor units, so that they're not right up against you know, the parking area or the drive aisle or the concrete sidewalk. So the building could shift a little bit, but we would still ultimately need some form of variance, because we may only have a couple of meters to shift that building.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a builder, I'm not a planner. I mean, I understand you know more than I do. I feel that there is landscaped area around the side, and I feel that it says that there would be negative impacts on the amenity area landscape space. And I feel personally that that's a bit of an exaggeration. I feel that it probably could have been moved back a little bit. But again, I'm not an expert, so I would defer to your opinion.
Oh, any other comments from members? Well, the Vice Deputy Mayor made a comment that very important to, and it relates to site plan, to get the landscaping right. And I would echo that. I also will comment that I believe this will be the first underground below grade parking situation in Saugeen Shores. So really important that we get that right too, because certainly, you know, that's an opportunity for the future in terms of some parking situations around the community as well. Are there any, there's no further comments. I will now declare the public meeting to be closed. And we will now consider a recommendation on the application, which I have a recommendation from the planner. And the recommendation is that the application for minor variance from comprehensive zoning bylaw 75-2006 is hereby granted, subject to the following conditions. Number one, that any future development on the property conforms to the provisions of the zoning bylaw. And number two, that the decision applies only to the proposed development as indicated on Schedule A, attached to and forming part of this decision. And Schedule A does show that the reduction in the side yard setback is for building C. And the reasons for this are, number one, the variance maintains the intent and purpose of the official plan. Number two, the variance maintains the intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw. Number three, the variance requested is desirable for the appropriate and orderly development in use of the lands and buildings. And number four, that the variance is minor in nature. Can I have a mover and a seconder for this recommendation to grant approval? Moved by Councillor Stack, seconded by Member Zimmerman. Is there any further discussion on the application? Vice Deputy Mayor Myatt?
Madam Chair, and this is not really, I can ask it, is the developer still on the call? Like, we can do the vote, and then I want to keep them on because I have a question.
Okay. Is there any other comment specific to the recommendation to grant approval? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? The motion is carried and the minor variance is granted. 1 second, Mike, before I believe the Vice Deputy Mayor wanted to make an additional comment. We'll make room for him on the agenda.
It's just a general question because it's exciting. These 190 some units, there'll be condos. They'll be sold. They're not apartment rentals. I understand. Is that correct? There'll be condos that will be put on the market and be sold. And my other question is, obviously, I have to pre-sell these units. And you know, are you at a point right now where the pre-sales are going well, and when could you be in the ground?
Through Madam Chair, I might let Mr. Drung answer that one on how to say. I know there's been a very positive response, but maybe Mr. Drung, if you could just add a little more information, that would be great.
Sure, yeah, through you, Madam Chair. We haven't officially launched for sale yet. The market is not fantastic right now. We are excited for the project, but you know it's just a tough time in the market right now with interest rates the way they are. In terms of, so we're hopeful that perhaps an interest rate drop in the near future is going to have a positive effect on the market. On a lot of these projects, our development timelines are getting shovel ready are a function of our sales. So it's a little too early to say when we could be in the ground. But I can assure you, we're trying to get in the ground as soon as possible. We just need some positive traction in the market, and that will allow us to start breaking ground.
Just a quick follow-up. Has there been a lot of interest?
I don't have that information from our sales team, but I think it's certainly Reed's is certainly excited to be in this market, but I don't know how the interest level is just yet.
Well, good luck.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is just a notice about our next meeting date, which is set for June the 17th, 2024. That will be confirmed. Do we know that we have any applications yet?
Not at this time.
Okay, well, it will be confirmed. Should there be a June 17th, 2024 meeting, it will be here at the Nuclear Innovation Institute, available in person or by Zoom. And seeing that's the end of the agenda, I'll ask for a mover and a seconder for adjournment. Moved by Councillor Stack, seconded by Member Wallace, that we now adjourn this Committee of Adjustment meeting of May the 21st, 2024 at 5:59 p.m. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. And thank you to all of you that are on Zoom.